It is. All right, everybody, welcome. I'm going to call to order Woodstock Planning and Zoning Commission monthly business meeting for March 16th, 2023. I got 7:35 p.m. We're going to do a roll call. We'll start with commissioners who are here. Do you mind starting for us?
Mark Blackburn. Ed Blodgett.
Jeff Gordon.
David Morris. Gerald Palula.
We're just trying to get rid of the echo. And then we'll go through both commissioners online. Doug Porter,
Here.
Joe Adaletta,
Here.
Dwight Reineman.
Here.
All right, we'll note the roll. And Nancy Frazier told me she was not going to be able to attend. And Dean Gould told me he was likely not going to be able to attend, but might try to attend by Zoom. And Jeff Marcotte is not able to attend. I don't know if Tim Young is away. He's in Hawaii. He's not attending. I can guarantee you, even by Zoom. Good for him. I think Jeff Marcotte's in Las Vegas. I don't think he's attending by Zoom. So, so we'll note that for the record. We have designation of alternates. We are in need of alternates. I don't need to go through the usual process to try to make certain we're going through people in certain order because we need all alternates. We have two alternates with us tonight, Doug Porter and Dwight Reinowitz. I will seat you and I'll note at the appropriate agenda item, Doug, that you want to be recused for one of the items, but you don't have to be recused for the rest.
Thank you.
If that's okay with you.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll note that. Thank you for noting that. And then that takes us. There's Owl. Why is it not picking up? Doug, Dwight, are you able, Joe, are you able to hear us okay?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Same here.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Dwight, Doug, you're able to?
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right, good. Okay. Seems to be working. Okay. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. My chair's report, my usual report, where I thank commissioners for our twice a month meetings. So thank you for the work that you're doing. My usual for thanking staff as well. Dan Malo, our CEO, is not able to be here tonight. But we thank him anyway for the remaining time he'll be with us. I think sometime in April is mid-April is his last day. Thank you, Delia. Amy, thank you. So. And I just want to remind everybody that our April special meeting is not the first Thursday, it is the second Thursday. So it's the 13th, and we're meeting for a monthly business meeting on the 20th. And our April 13th special meeting is doubly special because that is actually our annual legal training session. So I'm going to note that on the minutes that it's special. So look, get questions to you, but Attorney Robin, but we can certainly go through stuff we want. But I'll send a reminder up to the others who aren't here tonight. But that will be the 13th. That's the so we don't conflict with the Passover holiday. That's on the 6th. Do we have citizens' comments not on anything that is on the agenda? We have meeting minutes. I believe we have the March 2nd meeting minutes. I think that's the only meeting minutes we have to approve. What is the will of the commission?
I move to accept the minutes. Second.
The motion by Moore, seconded by Blackmer to approve the March 2nd, 2023 special meeting minutes as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will go through the roll. Joe Adaletta,
Aye. Aye.
okay. Mark Blackmer,
Aye.
Sid Blodgett,
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, I will actually go to aye. David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palula.
Aye.
Doug Porter.
Aye.
Dwight Leinowitz.
Aye.
Without objection, that so passes. Congratulations, Amy, your record continues. You have yet to say no to any of your minutes. Okay, that takes us then to two new business items. We have business item 5A. This is number 6470331M, subdivision modification, English Neighborhood Road, John Kennison. This is a request to extend deadline for filing of Mylars. We should have in the meeting packets for information at the desk. The March 3rd written request for a 90-day extension to file the Mylars, and a copy of the October 20th, 2022 commission meeting where we actually approved this. So, but if there's anything that, Mr. Parent, I know you're here, it's always nice to see you. If you don't mind just stating your name for the record, and if there's anything you wish to, speak on, we're happy to hear from you. I just ask that you don't go on for like 5 hours.
For the record, Pete Parent, professional engineer with CHA, representing the applicant. So the applicant's attorney, unfortunately, had passed away in the process here. So we ended up not being able to file the Mylar in a timely fashion. So we're requesting an extension of that deadline. It does have new counsel on board, so it shouldn't be much longer, but they do need to review all the documents. Make sure everybody's on the same page.
And so it looks like you're asking for 90 days. And this is, we haven't granted any extensions yet, right, Delia?
Yeah. So
this would be the first extension that we're able to grant. Okay, anything else? Seems very straightforward. Thank you. We'll reserve the rest of your hours for some other time. Very good. So, I'll open up to commission. What does the commission wish to do? And then we can have any discussion if the commission wishes.
Move we grant the extension.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead. You want to be the second or?
Whichever. I did say second.
Okay. Kind of we're both at the same time, so I just want to, we don't want to have a fight or a duel.
Not a problem.
Okay. We can get you the second or whatever. That's right. So motion by Moore, seconded by Blackmer to grant the requested 90-day extension for the subdivision modification on English Neighborhood Road, 6470331M. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta,
Aye.
Mark Blackmer,
Aye.
Sid Blodgett,
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palula.
Aye.
Doug Porter.
Aye.
Dwight Reinowitz.
Aye.
Without objection, that so passes. Congratulations. Then you'll work with Delia and whoever as far as whatever needs to be done with the Mylar. Then once they're submitted, if you or whoever will let me know and I'll sign.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for coming tonight. The next is agenda item 5B. This is to set an effective date for the text amendment change regarding commercial cannabis moratorium end date as approved by this commission at its March 2nd, 2023 meeting. Delia was kind enough to point out to me that I forgot that when we approved the moratorium extension end date, that we didn't set the effective date for the text amendment to take effect. Which is a technicality, but important nevertheless. So we're adding it to this agenda. This is not a discussion about what we already approved to extend the moratorium to Halloween of this year. It's more for us to set the effective date of this text amendment to actually go in. This hasn't yet been submitted, or has it been submitted to be
No,
posted?
need to put the first date.
So what would you recommend? We have to have a 15-day appeal from when it's published.
The earliest they can get it into the villagers next week. Considering that is the patient date, and
That would be, usually it comes out on Thursday, but people get it usually on like a Friday. So that would then be 24th is when you get it, and then beyond that, say 2 weeks or it has to be 15 days. As long as it's
June
before,
30th.
well, we have to have it before April 31st. in The current moratorium ends. So what date did we want to do? If it's 15 days,
It's 15 business days or 15 days?
it's 15 days, yeah. So on the calendar, where does that come out to be for us to set the date? It goes on the 24th, so that would be. If we did the 10th, that would be enough time, right, Gillian? That's Monday the 10th. And that's more than enough time for our current moratorium ends. Okay,
It's only 11 days. from the 10th.
no, it would be more. The 10th, but then if we put in the 24th is the rest of March. That would be 7, 14, 15, that would be 17, wouldn't it, days?
We only need 50.
We only need 15 for the appeal process.
Right.
So if the 10th would work, for example,
Yeah.
but I'll,
I was
people, well, we can have a motion if you want to set that date, but would that make sense for people if we set it, the 10th gets in the paper? We get the appeal period, and we have more than enough time then before April 31st to have it effective.
should we set it 17th just in case publication is screwed up? So we have no week. It's still before the 31st.
In case the paper messes up.
Yeah, but it's April 30th that we set on the end of April.
We still have, if we set it 17th, that gives us a week.
That's fine. Yes, because we just need to make certain the text amendment becomes active before the 31st.
Okay.
The 30th, then. And that way we're covered. That's fine with me then. Yeah, that work for you? So that, is that a motion?
I someone that we set the start date.
Is there a second? If you want to,
Go for it, Joe.
yeah, if you want a second.
I'll second it.
Still wants no cutting down. We're trying to give you opportunity.
Okay, no problem.
But we can give you more tonight if you like. So we're going to set effective date of the 17th of April 2023. Motion made by Moore, seconded by Palula. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta,
Aye.
well, he's changed it.
Aye, that changed computers. So this is me, even though it says Patricia Brickman on the computer.
Well, I don't know if you're trying to go and do drag. If you are,
Well-
stay in Tennessee. Don't go. to
Well,
Mexico.
I think I still look the same, Jeff.
Okay. You still look pretty to us.
Okay.
Mark Blackmer,
Aye.
Sid Blodgett.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. David Morse,
Aye.
Joe Palula,
Aye.
Doug Porter,
Aye.
Dwight Reynolds.
Aye.
That so passes without objection. So you'll take care of that, Delia?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thank you for pointing it out.
No problem.
So. One of the many reasons we have you here. Okay, so that then takes us moving to the minutes. All right, that takes us to the next item, which is preliminary discussion. This is agenda item 6A. This is Treehouse Farm and Fermentary, 54 Joy Road, discussion only about proposed beer fermentation and sales. I'm going to state some rules as far as what we do and what we don't do for a preliminary discussion. Preliminary discussion, first and foremost, is not an application. We're not following any application timeline or process. Thus, this is not a public hearing. This is actually not even a venue to hear from the public. This is a venue purely to hear from a potential applicant. We'll note that there is no actual application and to have discussion with the commission. So I know there's people here from the public. I just have to let you know that this is not the venue for that. If we do get an application, that's a different process. And then we follow a different timeline and we follow different rules that we follow. Also want to note that for preliminary discussion, this is non-binding. We do not take votes. Anything that we say is not necessarily, we've made the decision by a vote and that's what it is. We do give guidance. We do try to answer questions. We're not necessarily here to get into the merits of a potential application. We're more to discuss a potential application, questions about process, things like that. We can certainly weigh in what we think as far as we think it needs a permit, the type of permit, things like that. Potential things we might request to give people a heads up. A potential applicant can ask us questions as well, and we're happy to answer as best as we can, but we know it's non-binding. We always welcome preliminary discussions because we think it's a good start to a process. So thank you for asking for it. I'm happy to have you on the agenda. And then certainly if there is an application submitted, we always suggest work with someone like Delia. One can go through the ins and outs of the actual submission process, the standards, all that other stuff, the timeline, all of it. And we're happy to answer some of those questions tonight as well. I will note that we have received some information that I believe was in the meeting packets, or was this emailed out to people? I know it didn't make the meeting packet. I don't remember.
Yes.
Oh, do Doug, Dwight, Joe, do you have the stuff?
I have it. Yes, I have it as well, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I just want to make certain that we're not.
Yep. I saw it online. Thank you.
I know we had copies here on the desk tonight. I know the answers to some of this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you have anything that you are going to be submitting now to us?
No,
Okay,
well, I was
if you
gonna
just
say-
state your name for the record.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Where to stand?
You don't have to stand.
Podium.
Yeah. I usually have a photo. We don't.
Jeff,
For the record, my name is Megan Miles. I am a land use attorney at the law firm of Carmody, Torrance, and Tennessee. And my firm represents Treehouse Farm and Fermentary, which operates the farm and fermentary at 54 Joy Road.
Thank you.
Yes,
Do you
that's
have
my,
anything that you're submitting additional tonight?
so I had some site photos to exhibit to the commission on the site list today and how we're going forward. I
Is
don't
that
know.
something electronic or is it?
Yes, there, I gave a zip drive to do
Okay,
it.
so that's good. So we'll
So,
note that. So
yeah.
that way folks online, otherwise we have to make,
Yeah, I gave
we have to make copies and everything. So,
hard copies as well if people here would like them.
well, if it's up electronically, we'll show it electronically, but there isn't anything paper wise. Okay. Thank you. I will note that we did receive some additional documents, but it's not in the purview for us to take those up tonight. We did receive some documents that did come in from a couple of towns in Massachusetts. And we did receive a communication from a member of the public. But because this is not an application, these things will be in file. If/when an application is submitted, those things can be brought forward. That's not something that we do during the preliminary discussion. Did you have a question?
If we won't have access to the.
Well, questions have to come through me. Can you state your name for the record?
Lisa Delphine, I'm just curious.
As far as to get copies? Is that- be public with it. It's submitted to the land use department.
Put it on the OneDrive.
Yeah, so we'd have to talk with the zoning enforcement officer. He would get that stuff up onto the town website. It is technically public document.
That's fine, yeah.
So anything submitted to us that would be considered public document in this regard. We wouldn't be distributing it tonight. You know, where it stands now, we don't have full access to the office upstairs. That's something I would recommend you talk with the zoning enforcement officer. He would be back on Tuesday. He only works 2 days a week, and we're not open Fridays. He usually gets it up on the website. So if we have it electronically, then we can get that to them to get up. So that stuff we can get up. So I've noted that all for the record. So really, this would be for us to hear from you. Oh, sorry. Yes, Doug. Yes, do you want to recuse yourself? Doug?
Yes, please.
So we'll note for the record, thank you, Doug, that Doug, you're recused for this agenda item. Thank you. So we're happy to hear from you. I just want to let you know that we try to give as much time as we can, but there's a limit to how long we can be here at town hall tonight, so to speak. So like, we won't be here to midnight, but I think we can get through some things. And so, but otherwise, right now, we'll be open, to you. I just ask that, if any one of you are going to speak for the first time, just state your name for the record, so it's clear this is being recorded. But other than that, we're here to hear thinking and questions that you might have of us, and then we as commissioners might ask. But please, whoever wishes to.
I was just gonna say, we can go ahead and introduce ourselves.
Yeah,
My
if
name
you
is
would like.
Maggie Moran, the chief of staff of Treehouse Brewing Company, and who's my colleague here.
Yes, my name is Alice Maisley. I'm the regulatory specialist for Treehouse Brewing Company.
My name is Eric Nelson. I'm the head farmer.
Yes. Well, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So,
Start off.
So I want to be very respectful of everyone's time, so I'll keep it short and sweet.
sure, whatever you wish to present to us.
Absolutely thrilled to be here. And Woodstock is really, really special to Treehouse Brewing Company. Our operations are very, very special and near and dear to all of us at Treehouse. We have multiple locations across Massachusetts, and farming and agriculture use is incredibly important to us, as I said. So we really thank you for your time, and I look forward to kind of presenting the rest of our plans and our intent.
Sure. Yep, however you wish to proceed. Yep.
So, again, for the record, my name is Megan Miles. The property currently operates as a farm, the 54 Joy Road, it operates as a farm. And at this time, they also ferment on the property apple juice to make hard cider. And they age on top of that hard cider, fruits and vegetables grown from the farm. And they currently have, and have for a couple of years, had limited tasting and sales of the cider that's made on the farm to the public. So my understanding is that before my firm got involved in 2019 and 2020, shortly after Treehouse purchased the farm, there was Treehouse came to this commission multiple times to keep the commission apprised of their intent for the farm, their intent for operations, for fermentation, very candid discussions, informal discussions like this. I think the last one though was in 2020, and cider went up and running. It's been there a couple of years, and obviously now it's been a few years. And Treehouse is now looking to incorporate making beer into their existing fermentation operation. So we were actually, my firm was brought on, and so my understanding was that back in 2019, 2020, the conversation was, okay, well, if you guys want to start making beer, that may require a special permit, where that might be different. We'll revisit that whenever you file an application, but that seems a little different to us. And so I think in early 2022, my firm was brought on and said, it looks like we're going to need a special permit. And so we like, all right, so we actually pulled title, and we looked at title. We said, this is deed restricted farm. So this site at 54 Joy Road is the deed restricted farm. So that means it can only operate as an agricultural. It's limited to agriculture and reasonable accessory agriculture. So, we told them, we're like, listen, it's great you've been having these conversations with Woodstock, but you have to go to the Department of Agriculture first. They hold the deed, there's a deed restriction for agriculture. You guys need to make sure that agriculture is comfortable that fermenting beer on the site and offering the limited tasting for beer and cider is an agriculture use in accordance with the deed restriction. So that's where they've been the last few months. That's where they started, took a few months. And candidly, this site will be the first site in the state of Connecticut that makes beer on PDR farmland. And so because of that, the Department of Agriculture gave us a lot of attention. We're asking them to look at something new. Everyone is widely accepted that farms make hard cider. So we had to walk them through the processing, the site multiple times to really get them comfortable that this was an appropriate agricultural use. And the nice thing is we did. So we did get the Connecticut Department of Agriculture confirmed that Treehouse's intended operations, the scope of it is an agriculture use. And they issued a letter confirming that. And the reason it's signed by the commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Agriculture itself is because this would be the first one in this case. We wanted to make sure he weighed in on it and we offered it from him. So with that update, it's very exciting now to come back to the town and this commission, provide the update that the state has confirmed that they really believe the scope of this falls within the definition of agriculture. That's why we're here today for an informal discussion. Technically, we filed as pre-application review. It's really to pick up the conversation that was had back in 2019 and 2020 and restart it. Since I have the floor, I would like to take a few minutes because I know there's some new people on the commission and I realize I should be also talking to the camera now. I just remembered that. That there's some new people on the commission. It's been 3 years. It's been 3 long years. So people probably forgot. And so I'd like to just go through the property and the existing operations to bring everyone up to speed. And then discuss how making beer on the site will work, tastings and sales really if it's the operations. And really the impetus of the letter is that with this confirmation that it's agriculture, because agriculture is permitted by right in the zone, really feel that a special permission is required. So that's why we're here today for an informal discussion. So with leave, I'll turn to just reviewing the property and
Sure, please go ahead.
questions. Okay, so we have
We're
pictures
gonna
on.
be using this then?
Yes, I'd like to refer to this. So the site itself, and this is informal, but I do have notes, I admit it. So, there's pictures up on the screen. The site is 54 Joy Road. It's almost 94 acres. It's a very large site and it's its own community district, like most of Woodstock is. It is about 18 acres are farms currently. The remaining acreage is either in its natural state or improved with the structures that you can see here on this screen. So clearly it's a very large site, mostly farm or in its natural state, but there are some structures. You can skip ahead. I can walk through this. You know, the next picture. We need to scroll down probably, yeah. There we go. So this is the close-up of the structures.
Have to re-share it.
Okay.
It's not letting me move within the.
Okay, so this is a close-up of the structures. In the back, there is the fermentation building. They enclose the barn. That's where the fermentation tanks are. You can see some greenhouses in the forefront. There is a structure that's a home in the forefront. The picnic tables, the pond, and then behind the residential style structure is that's the tasting room there. It contains a historic cider press, and that's where the tastings are. And then patrons can also use the picnic table in the front during that letter. And what you can't really tell in this photo is that behind the fermentation barn is a gravel parking lot. You can go to the next picture. I have to stop share every time. I'm sorry.
I've never done that before.
Okay. This is just another angle. Another angle. You can see that there's also gravel circulation areas. Nothing's paved. Go to the next one, I think. You can skip this one. Keep going.
you might have to do is you might have to get up to the screen and have them draw it. Well, the commission so ordered. For no reason.
Informally.
It doesn't have to be drawn to this. That's right.
You can keep going to
Is
the
it
next
showing
one.
on?
You can show this one. This is, yeah, I would share this.
Okay. For whatever reason, there's technical difficulty.
Bad luck on my part, I guess. This is inside the fermentation barn. So these are the existing tanks. Unfortunately, the brewer who makes the hard cider at the facility couldn't come tonight, so I'm probably not the best one to educate, you, but other people here are.
We'll try.
Yeah, but so this is the existing infrastructure. Nothing needed more is needed or would need to be added here. Especially no expansion of this building. Okay, I'm gonna. Okay. You get this one. If that's, you can actually share this one. That is good for the benefit of people. This is inside the tasting room. So this is the desk where people, it's a little hard to see, but there's some taps behind, and that's where folks can walk up and order their drinks. And there is a sign there that says maximum occupancy of 49 people. Okay, the next one. Yeah, you can share this one. So.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I think one of the lovely things about this picture is this marriage of menting our beverages and also foods that we grow on our farm. And Eric, I don't know, what's my segue? You talk a little bit about what we grow on here?
Yeah, we have 1,200 fruit trees, apples, peaches, plums, pears, 4 different types of grapes, 1,400 in total. 5,000 miscellaneous small berries, that, our brewer gets to experiment with in the facility there. And then we grow a bunch of different vegetables too, mainly tomatoes. But a little bit of everything for that. For our little tasting room, got a lot of weird experimental things. Fruit trees were young. They've been there 5 years now, and they're just really starting to bear. So it's definitely a long-term project. There's 130 trees that were there before. We're maintaining those, trying to bring some life back into those guys. But yeah, so it's interesting to see that every season and different parts of the season, different things to experiment with really making innovative, interesting beverage that's kind of completely unique and different than anything else on the market.
Yeah, and so to pick up on what Eric's saying in the room here about the making it's really a small scale specialty, and this image just is reflective of how, we have our special fermenting process, but we are incorporating what we actually grow and here work and the farmers that here hires on to make this really special.
And to that, every time you visit the farm, depending on if you went 3 times in a week, it may be the same selection, but if you were to go in different months, you would be encountering all different types of varieties of cider with different flavor profiles, and you really get to experiment alongside them as we find what tastes good in the.
And then just to, close the loop on that, also I think we have 4 employees at this time on the site, and also they partner with the Yukon Agriculture Extension. And you guys were part of the CSA, right?
We used to do a CSA, yes, 100-member CSA. So that was a big undertaking, and now we focus more on growing fruit because that's something that's more akin to our business model, is putting it in, value-added product that is cider. As things are getting bigger, they take more time. So, yeah.
And then there's one more photo that I think is valuable to share, which is actually how you access the site. So you can get that one. This one, so if you can share this one as well. So the property does not have a paved driveway entrance. You access it via Joy Road via a gravel driveway. It looks like this and it's very windy. It's absolutely beautiful, but it's not something that's paved or drained like that. So for that reason, they're only open seasonally. They're closed in the winter months. I think you guys are open May through December, I believe. Yeah, so May through December and just Thursdays through Sundays. I think it's when they offer the tasting sale. So limited hours of operation. And really that's because Treehouse purchased this to be a farm, to grow products for experimental and to experiment with new flavors and that sort of thing. But it's important to them that this is a working farm that's preserved. And that was very important to the Department of Agriculture as well. The first people we were actually interfacing with was the Farmland Preservation Program because of the deed restriction. So it's absolutely critical that the farmland is preserved and no arable land is reduced. That's the property. I'd like to briefly explain how the cider is made, and I promise it's relevant for people. And again, jump in if I get any of this incorrect. But so ancillary to these farming operations, they ferment apple juice on the farm to make cider. So they either crush their own apples to make the apple juice, or off season they obtain apple juice from reputable producers in the state. So with the apple juice, they transport it to the fermentation building, and the apple juice, the sugar from the apples is fermented to make hard cider, and then that hard cider is aged with fruits and other products grown on the farm. That's how they make the cider. And also currently, and since starting the offering cider tasting and sales, they've operated under a reservation system, which is a system that they've employed in other towns that they operate, particularly Sandwich. And that works by, you can't visit the site unless you have a reservation. So it's just like a restaurant or something like that. So it's currently not open to the public without a reservation. They've found over the years that it's really not needed. There hasn't been a demand, a significant demand that's really needed it, but they have had it in place. And more importantly, they have the technological capability to just turn it on and get it up and running. So that's how they've been operating, and the technology is there to continue to do so if it's needed, but it's really hasn't been needed for cider, it seems. Okay. So, and then the last thing is that the funny thing is that no one has really questioned that making hard cider on a farm is farming. The Department of Agriculture never questioned that when they were getting various construction permits to like close the barns, add the fermentation tank, that sort of thing. The folks at agriculture, like farms make hard cider all the time. And in connection with the liquor permits, multiple zoning enforcement officers signed off on it as zoning compliant. So cider has for many years, for a long time, been seen as a use on a farm. They make cider. So beer, I finally add beer. So making beer, and I put this in my correspondence, making beer involves the exact same processing. There's no new equipment needed. There's no new construction needed, anything. What it is that Treehouse obtained wort. So like how they got apple juice, they obtained wort. Wort, my understanding, is sugar water from malt. So apple juice is sugar for apples. Beer is sugar. So they obtain wort. They can make this at their other offsite facilities. So in the same containers that they use to bring the apple juice to the fermentation barn, they transport the wort, and in the tanks, the wort is fermented and fermented into beer, and then it's aged over time with fruits and berries grown on the farm, and that's how they make beer. Exact same equipment in the building. And then the intent is that they could then offer tastings and sales in the exact same way they've been doing it for cider. Because there's no new construction, it's going to be the exact same tasting room, the exact same occupancy limit. No new parking is going to be constructed, so there's no available additional parking for people, and there's no driveway improvement. So it's really going to be the exact same operation. The exact same processing of agricultural products on the property are going to be used to make both beer and cider, hard cider. And patrons to the farm can either pick the tap that has a glass of beer, get a glass of beer, and they can grab a tap of cider. So that's the intent. And it's a really nice symbiotic relationship. We're here. Successful beer made at this property is going to depend on the success of the farm. And the desire to test new beer flavors is gonna spur further in the farm. So it really is a nice relationship, and that's why Treehouse purchased the property. They're really excited about that unique opportunity. I had mentioned that, well, then my firm got involved to start the permitting process, and everybody, there's a deed restriction here. It has to be agriculture. You have to go to the Department of Agriculture. Multiple site walks with folks from the Department of Agriculture, multiple correspondence, which they appended to their approval letter. Everything I wrote for them was added to it. And after that, they confirmed that yes, Treehouse's operations, their fermentation process to make beer, their current scale and scope, that's agriculture under state statute. It's permitted under the deed restriction, and it's wholly appropriate on this site. And they, I see you checking your watch, I'm almost done.
No,
Okay.
you got more than enough time.
Okay. It's, so they concluded it's agriculture. So that it was really nice to get that confirmation from them, because it was the confidence that Treehouse needed that they could really incorporate beer into the site. So now I'm here again before you guys tonight. As I said, my understanding was that before Treehouse had really kind of mapped out what they intended for the scale of the production of beer and that sort of thing. There was, the commission said, you might need a special permit. I was not involved in those discussions in the past. That's what it sounds like. So in the community district, agriculture use is permitted by right. And so that's why I wanted to restart the preliminary discussions, because I believe that the operations that Treehouse is intending, combined with the confirmation from the Department of Agriculture that this really is an agricultural use, that because the Woodstock definition of agriculture mirrors the state statute, the same definition, that Treehouse's operations really are agriculture under zoning as well, and permitted by right. They can go ahead and start the liquor permit process. So this isn't the last step. They still have more regulatory level of review, but that was why I requested pre-application review. Continue that discussion. Did I forget anything? I may not be. And actually, I'll continue to harp on that. It can't be classified as anything other than agriculture, because then they're violating their deed restriction. Anything they do on the site has to be considered agriculture. And the Department of Agriculture is very comfortable with what they intend to do with beer as agriculture, but also it's really important. Woodstock agreed. I do understand, and I put this in my correspondence as well, that there's sensitivity to site demand once they start offering beer. But Treehouse operates multiple facilities up in Massachusetts, and some of them are extremely popular, particularly their Charleston site. So because of that, I did include in my correspondence notes, just noting that even though this is a farming operation, but also for this site, this is not going to turn into their Charleston site for a couple of reasons. They're offering, actually, let me back up. So my understanding is that actually they've been operating with cider on the site for a couple of years now without any complaint or concern. So it's evident that the current scale of operations is actually going really well. That there hasn't been any issues. So that's what is intended to continue at the site. It's just a variety of options are going to be available for customers. They're limited to the existing improvements. So they're not going to have the capacity to take on one. In particular, their tasting facility is limited to 49 people. And that really does limit people outside as well, because Treehouse wants the ability for their patrons to come in and out of the tasting room. So someone can come to the site and be there for a couple hours, have a nice time, especially on nice weather, and go in and out of the tasting room and grab a drink or two. So the indoor capacity really does limit outdoor. I did talk to the fire marshal about this for the meeting, and he stressed, he's like, Treehouse has been great to work with. I think he's had to inspect the site every year in connection with liquor permit renewals. So he says they've been great to work with. Can you guys really keep it at 49 people when you start introducing beer? As he put it, he's like, some people don't like cider, but they like beer. Like, are you guys really gonna be able to keep it? His was more a fire marshal concern, like, are you guys actually able to manage the capacity? So I asked him, I was like, listen, if they kept the reservation system going, at least in the beginning, if it's needed, would that alleviate your concerns? And he said, yes, that would. It works for restaurants, it's worked for the cidery for some time. That would alleviate my concerns, as long as there's some check to manage the amount of people coming on the site. So he felt it would. I know that Treehouse would love to move away from the system because they think it really hasn't been needed, but it seems like that, at least in the beginning, was a good way to at least give some comfort to the fire marshal that on-site demand would continue to stay on or near 49 individuals.
It's also available should it be needed,
Yeah.
even if it's not usually needed.
Yes, and they actually have not been using this system only at Woodstock. They have another facility in Sandwich, Sandwich on Cape Cod, and my understanding is that's on a protected sand dune or something. Okay.
Half of our property is on, a coastal dune, which is, it's absolutely beautiful, but, you know, we take the same care for the environment we do here in Woodstock. And so we opened with a reservation system really simple. You go on your phone or on your desktop and say, this is the time I want to come, and then you get a reservation, just like a restaurant. People then know anything about showing up at their designated time. We have the ability to throttle that any time to say, hey, it's a beautiful day. We want to make sure that it's, you know, easy going, comfortable experience. This is very, very small scale. We do not expect any changes from what we're doing in right now. The only thing that we're asking people talking about changing is additional part of the building against them. Anyway, we will be coming anyway. We'll also be able to fire specialty here. You know, we're kind of off the boat here, and we have to limit the guests if need be. In Sandwich, it's a small facility with very limited parking, and we can go successfully. Yeah.
And my last point is and I'm gonna keep coming back to the restriction, that they have that governing their use of the property. And the commissioner of the Department of Agriculture, in issuing his confirmation, put a very clear caveat in his letter that his confirmation was limited to the representations made by Treehouse. So if Treehouse wants in any way to expand, they have to go back to the Department of Agriculture. So there's always a level of regulatory oversight on this site outside of zoning, and that's the Department of Agriculture. So they regulate construction and then also use the highway. So that's that. Yeah, so,
Thank you.
yeah.
I'll open up to commissioners. If commissioners have any questions or comments, I'll reserve mine for towards the end. Sure, David, please go ahead.
When you make beer, when you make cider, it's from products you grow on your farm. When you make beer, it's going to be all imported products that you don't grow. Are you growing hops? Are you growing desserts? Are you growing anything that isn't made of your beer on that farm?
Oh, are we growing?
Anything that's going in, nothing, when you make beer, all your raw materials are gonna have to be in. Right? You're not growing anything to make your beer on that farm. When you make cider, it's your apples, it's your berries, your fruits are going in, so it's product from that farm.
So that was actually 99% of our conversation. Interestingly, they didn't have anything to ask about tastings or sales. That for them, it was all of our conversations were understanding the processing on the site, because that's what they said as well. They said, well, you're growing apples on this farm, so clearly the hard cider is from the apples. What is this wort? What is it? So for the cider, and I think this is standard for farms that make products, is that seasonally the apples are from the farm. Off season, they do get them from areas Connecticut farm. So they have a symbiotic relationship with them. What the Department of Agriculture is interested in is that they wanted to make sure that, so backing up a bit, is that it's a bit of a chicken and an egg situation to make beer on farms, because it's not economically viable to grow grain in this area of Connecticut. It's my understanding. It's that Treehouse is experimenting with growing grains, but getting to a level of growth that can independently make its own beer entirely from grains from the farm. My understanding is a decades-long process. So what the department liked and to encourage this use is, Treehouse has to partner with a Connecticut farm. So they partnered with Brawl Family Farm in Enfield. And Enfield, at this time, they would get their malt from the farm in Enfield. And then Treehouse makes the wort, and then it comes to the farm. And then, in the fermentation process, it's fermented with berries, and other products, syrup and that sort of thing, incorporated into it and aged over it. So, ingredients from the farm are, going in, would be used to make this beer, and then anything else is sourced from Connecticut, another Connecticut farm. And my understanding is this is a pretty common process, farms partnering with each other and that sort of thing. Yeah.
We can, I mean, are you gonna get your hops from local farms? You can grow hops in this area.
We do have some hops in the ground. They take 3 years to mature, so they're not quite ready yet, but, we are growing some hops.
And the other question, the 49 capacity you're talking about, is that just the capacity for the building, or is that people on site?
It's the building, yes.
So you can have many more than 49 people on site.
We can, but it's not our expectation that.
So the
Breweries tend to draw a lot of people.
the 49, so the building capacity is 49, but that acts as a check on outside as well, because the patrons don't just come grab one drink and then they don't go into the building ever again. So it's not as though one person, they can fill up by just grabbing one drink and then they go outside, and then there's another 49 people that can come in and go outside, and 49, it's not, my understanding is it's not that type of operation. Rather, the patrons who come, they come for a couple hours, have two or three drinks, probably,
Three
the maximum
max.
is 3. So they go into the building, they grab a drink from the tap, and they go sit outside and enjoy the beer and enjoy the farm. And then when they finish that one, they go back in, they get another drink. And so the 49 actually mostly acts on a check for outside as well, because they want their patrons to be able to come and go through the.
But technically, 49 is a building capacity. So you
That's
got
the
many
building
more.
capacity, that's right. And then the other checks on occupancy is parking. They do not have a striped parking lot, it's only a gravel lot. And I doubt you guys will let people.
No,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
not at all.
They
And
use it.
and that's also, as I said, it is our intent, just to operate the way that we have. Our greatest interest for this period is that is, you call it is relaxed. We're very aware that you are not high traffic. Also, it's technically not, we're not ruling anything on the elementary, so, it is a lovely day to come with your family or friends and, enjoy agricultural products, so we're not anticipating any sort of. Going to expect.
And also last, is my understanding when the CSA was open, and no one doubts that the CSA is accessory active. Except attracted 100, 200 people to the site at a time. So, site capacity related to the CSA was larger than was anticipated to be attracted.
What? I mean, when Treehouse was here before, they specifically said they weren't interested in doing beer. They're gonna do the fruits and ciders and all that. They specifically said they weren't interested in doing beer. So, I mean, I understand things change. And I understand things can change in the future. So you're saying you don't know, what is the maximum area developable for buildings? There's a formula that the state has that's a ratio of acres you can use to find farmland. So what is the max that you can use? So how many more buildings could you build? How many more square footage of buildings could you build?
I don't have the answer to that because we have no intention to build any additional buildings.
But I want to know.
I have to check the deed restriction, because I think
I mean,
the
I'm very
deed
familiar with
restriction,
soul development,
yeah,
so I'm very familiar with that. And I know there's a formula for if I wanted to expand more barn or buildings. And I went over the amount of prime, percentage of prime farmland, then you're restricted. I just wanted to know what the area is that you can use for parking and buildings, the max area you can use with the area, with the land that you have. I think that's important for us to know.
I think one thing to note while they're looking at numbers is that in order to expand any of those buildings, we would have to go before the Department of Agriculture.
Oh, I know that. I know, but I just want to know what their limits.
Yeah, I'm giving them, I'm buying them time. That's all.
No, I think that's a very important question.
And if I just may quickly follow up with that, if you were at a future point wanting to expand, separate from anything you have to get from GOAG, you're gonna have to speak with us.
Absolutely.
Right, so I just wanna, I know that wasn't said, but it's applied, but it's said, so whatever the intention is not to do now, changes, certainly there's two different processes. GOAG has its jurisdiction than we do. Yeah, I get you, I had, after Dave, I had Delia, then I think Joe had his hand up, and then you can let Joe as well.
That's it for now.
I didn't mean to interrupt, because I didn't
No, it's fine.
stuff up, I didn't know if it had anything to answer for him, or if you just don't have the answer, that's okay. Oh, see the
I
calculator,
actually may, yeah, we may be able to figure this out.
okay.
4.7, okay, this is reading it really quickly, but, so the deed restriction says. No building, residential dwelling, structure, parking lot, driveway, road, or other temporary or permanent structure or improvement requiring construction shall be placed upon the premises except as provided in paragraph B. This is where you get to the ratio. So. So the acreage and productivity of arable land for crops cannot be materially decreased. Any new construction or modification of existing farm building necessary to the operation of a farm or farm prime land shall be limited to not more than 5% of the total of such prime farmland of which the state has purchased development rights. So assuming 94 acres, so the parcel is 94 acres, assuming that was entirely prime farmland, which is probably not, that'd be 4 acres. Yeah, so that'd be about 4 acres if there was, so then about 2 acres.
What do you have built up on that?
Not even, yeah,
Not
not even an acre.
Probably not, yeah,
The house and parking lot, barn, driveway?
that would all count
Yeah.
towards that construction.
Maybe an acre.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know about that.
So, yeah,
We're happy.
yeah. So clearly the site cannot turn into an entirely constructed. There's significant deed restricting construction, and as noted, there's multiple levels of regulatory review, which includes Department of Agriculture and the non.
Do you have anything further, Dave?
No, that's it.
Delia, then Joe Adaletta, then Joe Pula.
So my comment now is far removed from what Mr. Morse was saying a while ago. But to draw a parallel with wineries in Connecticut, a lot of them don't grow all of their own grapes. They have to bring grapes in to make wine. So doesn't sound unheard of that they would have to bring in the stuff to make beer. And I don't know anything about making beer, so there's stuff and they would have to bring it in.
It seems like a New England agriculture aspect where it's just everything so seasonal that to keep operations going.
Do you have any other questions?
No.
So Joe Adaletta, then Joe Pula, and you said.
Thank you, Jeff. Good evening, Megan and Treehouse crew. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can, okay. I just wanted to check a few things. In your correspondence, there's mention a few times about small batches and limited productions. Just wondering if that can be quantified as to related to what's being produced now at Woodstock or compared to the production quantity at Charlton, so we can get a sense of scale in actual numbers versus a narrative description at some point. If not right now, then I think it's good to compare it so we will have a sense of what the future might be. Wasn't clear if you said that the equipment currently used to make this used for cider production is the same equipment that would be used for the beer fermentation. So no new equipment being brought in for the beer fermentation. Is that's a correct understanding? Oh, okay, great. Thank you. I guess what I get a little concerned about is the scope, and hopefully your business is successful. It certainly seems like it is with the growth of the multiple sites out of the Charlton headquarters and growth there. But the growth in Woodstock obviously is our concern. And a lot of the language about currently things are not needed, or the plans today are not to expand or grow or do things. And I get a little worried about what does that mean 2, 5, 10 years from now, because certainly, as David Morrison mentioned, things do change, but the value of a special permit is that we can at least identify with the applicant what are some of the current and perhaps future expectations that can be contained in the special permit, regardless of the fact that the Department of Agriculture has to review things. That's nice, but that doesn't mean that it's still appropriate for the town of Woodstocks. Comments about the reservation process, which is available, and I think you said it's in place for the cidery, but doesn't seem necessary. Seems to diminish the importance of having that, and that raises a concern for me. Another concern is just the blurring of what is agriculture versus what is retail sales. Certainly, I think in my mind, agriculture is planting, growing, raising food of some types, whether it's animal or vegetable, and even fermenting apples and beer is okay as agriculture. It's what do you do with the products afterwards? And I try and envision, at least to help me make decisions, some pretty extreme examples. And I looked at things like, if Anheuser-Busch came into Woodstock and bought 50 acres of land, planted a couple of acres of hops, and built a factory to make beer, would they be considered an agricultural enterprise and by right be able to produce hundreds of kegs or cases or whatever their relevant measurement is for production quantity and not need a special permit? And again, all of this, I think, is revolving around whether the application from Treehouse requires a special permit or not. It's not saying business can't be done. It's just how it can be conducted. So that kind of blurring of lines of agriculture and retail is what is a general comment, not necessarily restricted to Treehouse, but in general about how agriculture is being blurred a little bit with retail sales, particularly if the Treehouse ends up with selling Treehouse coffee mugs, Treehouse t-shirts, Treehouse caps, Treehouse dish towels, Treehouse honey made from some other place, Treehouse chips to go with the tastings. All of those little retail things start becoming more of a retail operation as opposed to agricultural. And, for Woodstock, our regulations require a special permit for a retail operation. So those are just kind of the questions that are occurring to me as we talk about this. And I do appreciate the fact that you're here, willing to talk about this and listen to concerns. And so those were the initial questions. that I'm looking for specific answers as opposed to just my general concerns. So small batch quantification, limited production, what do you see or anticipate as that as quantities relative to quantities at one of your other sites that we may be familiar with? And I'll pick Charlton. So we know if it's a tenth of that production, that gives us this idea of the scale. And I think that was a specific question I wanted to answer, and I'll leave that, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay, that was the question that you were asking?
Correct.
Can you just repeat the question again?
I got 4.
Oh, you got 4 questions. Okay.
So, that's good. I got 4. I'm actually going to tackle the concern about blurring the lines between retail sale and agriculture. So the definition of agriculture does include limited retail sales. So it's definition, the statutory definition of agriculture and incorporated Woodstock definition of agriculture includes delivering to storage or market, or to carry or for transportation to market, or for direct sale of any agricultural or horticultural commodity as an incident to ordinary farming operation. So this is the discussion we had to have with the Department of Agriculture, and that's why it's generally considered appropriate for farmers to sell their own goods. Is that agriculture determined that the beer that's being made on the farm in the fermentery is a product, an agricultural product of the farm. And that's why it's appropriate here for the limited tasting sales, because what they're selling is the product of the farm. So then you ask, well, can't Anheuser-Busch purchase this farm, build a manufacturing center and start producing beer because apparently it's agriculture? Is that's zoning regulates, and the deed restriction regulates the use, not the user. So if Anheuser-Busch purchased the farm and started using farm products to make boutique Bud Light, then that would be agriculture under the definition of agriculture in Woodstock and the Department of Agriculture. Because as so long as what they're selling is a product of the farm. And that was the conversation we had to have. That what they're producing, this beer, is a farm product. It's a product of the farm. So the limited sales on site of the product is appropriate. Now, if they start selling tea towels, I admit it, I don't know if that's going to be an agricultural product of the farm, but the beer that's being produced and the tasting should fall within the definition of agriculture, especially the small scale of it that's intended here. Oh, and also, yes, to remind me of the deed restriction. So that was actually going to be a nice segue to my next point, is that folks have mentioned that things change over the year, things change. Over the last 8 months, I've learned that things do not change. I had to go to them, the new question about how about making beer on PBR farmland, and it took me 8 months to get an okay out of them. So my sense is that because of the deed restriction, which limits the site to agricultural uses, and clearly the town of Woodstock wanting to make sure that their definition of agriculture, as reflected in the state one, is also equally narrowly tailored. My sense is that there's going to be strict review of any changes and efforts to expand the definition of agriculture beyond what's contemplated and honestly existing today on the site. The last question you asked is output, it seems. So what is the comparison of really barrels produced between Charlton and Woodstock? I have old numbers for cider. I don't know if you guys have your numbers. Do you have?
We, without fermenting, we would not necessarily have those numbers.
Yeah.
We could definitely compare them.
So for cider, what I have, and this is old from 2020 projections at the time, was at that time, Charlton was consuming 31,000 barrels of cider per year, and is anticipated that there would be 500 barrels. So significantly smaller operation. We would have to follow. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I think I missed that comparison, Megan. Did you say 500 barrels? Oh,
Yeah.
did you say
Is that
500?
all your questions, Joe? Otherwise, Joe, what is next?
I was just trying to get a little clarity.
Patricia.
I think I'm unmuted, but I was trying, can you still hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to clear up, did Megan say 31,000 barrels of cider from Charlton versus 500 barrels at Woodstock? I missed that last part. Yes,
So as compared to the beer that we produced in Charlotte.
Yes,
It's not even one.
and
that's.
I would assume that that's actually the current state, or at least 2020, 2021, I think you said. Is there, I know you say your plans are not to grow too much more than that. But that's where the uncertainty of what the growth direction will be, that I'm just trying to see if it can be quantified at some point.
And a restriction on expanding the fermentation is that they're limited to the existing fermentation building and the square footage of it. So to grow at a certain point, it's going to require expanding the building, which is going to require a structural permit from the Department of Agriculture and the building permit review and that sort of thing. That's going to trigger additional review. That's even to expand fermentation on the site.
Thank you. Joe Poole, you're next, and then Sid.
Okay, you own 94 acres total. Is that the total property?
Correct.
And that all is under PDR?
Correct.
Nothing's been carved out for extra building or a parking lot or anything like that?
I know.
Okay, then get in the weeds about this number again, this percentage of the land that can be developed.
Oh, okay, that percentage. Okay.
More percent.
Would you read that to me again?
Yeah, let me, so back to the
Because I'm
restriction.
confused, is it open farmland? Is it-
5% of what
Prime farmland.
Okay, so you need a soil scientist out there to determine
They probably.
the soil type.
Sure, it's already done. Restriction, I think that probably that prime farmland is probably designated.
Okay.
I think wasn't mine.
And would that
Yeah,
likely
we
not
need to be in
include,
the map with the baseline documentation and fill everything.
Because you go to
Yeah.
depending on what the land is.
we can definitely find that out, but I am curious, would that not include already the area in which we have structures? So that's not considered prime farmland, so we.
Right, but I would like to have that number. Just so that we know
Okay.
5% of that number is the most that can be developed,
Okay.
okay?
So you'll get that number before midnight and call Commissioner Poole at his home.
I don't know, the basketball tournament's on, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just
Real quick, David, that's it.
quick Google thing, and you've got about 3 acres. to build it on.
Okay.
And then they can't do more than 5%.
5% of 5%.
So that's not 5% of 94 acres, it's 5% of whatever.
Yeah. This is all non-exact. Yeah, we're not record.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what we're discussing. So that's all-
Notes you made here wouldn't say.
We won't hold, we won't hold you to like the second or third decimal point.
Yeah,
We'll come close.
I don't believe I included a copy of the PDR deed in my letter submission, so. I mean, it's on the land record, but you guys a copy of that as well.
Sid?
Yeah, I've been to your facility in Charlton once. It was impressive. Learning a little bit about its growth, expansion, popularity, it's even more impressive. Here in Woodstock, similarly, but on a much smaller scale, there was this little ice cream stand that was approved. It became wildly popular, expanded tremendously, and the public loved it. Concern was the neighbors who really didn't like it. Noise, traffic, lighting, trash. So we as a commission need to look out not just for business development and agriculture, but neighbors. So Let's revisit that number 49. That was in your letter, as Miles.
Oh, the maximum capacity, yes.
Fourth page, third bullet. It said, because no new construction is proposed, the maximum on-site occupancy limit for the fire marshal will remain 49 individuals. I felt very good when I saw that number, limiting the size and scope of this Woodstock facility. However, that isn't really true, or perhaps to clarify it, that's in the building at any given time.
The tasting.
And I don't quite understand your explanation about how the overall occupancy of what I call the site, the entire property, is going to be that limited. And I'm not looking for an answer now, but that really needs to be addressed based on Charlton, based on how businesses can expand tremendously.
And that was the exact same comment I got from the fire marshal. Because as he said, he doesn't want to pollute the site to make sure that there's only 49 people. He wants to make sure that there's a system in place to make sure that that building only has 49 people maximum in it, and that the likelihood of people going into that building is maxed out at 49. So that is why initially Treehouse set up the reservation, that they could have a way to manage the number of people coming to the site. And it works very well because these days, so for example, I hear that Treehouse should open a place in Connecticut. That's great. I really want to go. So I Google it. I pull it up my phone, like, what are their hours, what's their address? So I go to their website and then I see on their website, oh, I need a reservation. I have to sign up. And so I click it, I get my time. And that's how Treehouse has been able to manage the popularity and the name recognition of the site. Because today, when everyone wants to figure out hours or location, they Google it on their phone and they pull it up on their phone or their computer. And so they're able to immediately see that they actually need a reservation. So that's how they've been managing it for now. And the town of Sandwich actually, I think, required it. Is that the case? So the town of Sandwich required it. They just implemented it on its own and on their own in Woodstock because they knew that the neighbors were very concerned about popularity.
Well, I wouldn't say that the town of Sandwich required it, but it was very much driven by us. The town of Sandwich very much supported it, our neighbors supported it. Our guest experience is paramount to us. We're not a China living type operation. That's why we're really interested in providing special experience to our guests. So it would be very against our interest to have any type of crowd. We instituted this technology and this reservation system so we could give the best guest experience, so people can interact with our farmers and our brewers and our staff. And it's a destination. It's not a drive-through. We plan to come in for a few hours and have your kids, interact with an actual farm, the community people who have ours, and then give people within our community and our neighbors. So we are good neighbors. And I think you'll find, I know it's not part of the public record, but we do have every single town manager that we operate in is submitted letters of support saying that Treehouse delivered on everything that they committed to us and in meetings just like this. So hopefully that will give you some confidence as well. But really, we've been operating for over 2 years now, and that's how we intend to continue.
And Allison just let me know that current numbers, so peak summer, the cidery had maximum 40 people at a time.
Not at a time. Literally over the course of one day, maybe 40 people.
Right. Dave Marsh made a good point previously about, and I would agree that beer is a lot more popular than cider. So again, we like numbers, not vague statements like Joanna mentioned. And again, looking at your letter, page 4, you talk about the operations seasons, and I see words like not intended, at this time, generally, typically. To me, that's very vague. So personally, I'd like to get some surety about what things are going to happen when seasons, hours, days of operation.
Anything else, sir?
To
Otherwise, I'll.
Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
We understand your interest in your application to us. And sounds like it's a little unclear exactly whether you need our permission or not to do any of this. So there are a couple of words, or phrases in your March 6th letter that are interesting. One is this idea of tasting.
Mhm.
And then there's this phrase in here, farm brewery, that was in a couple letters, March 3rd, from Brian Pearl, and then it's secondly from Cam. So this Connecticut Farm Brewery kind of piqued my interest, so I pulled up, I think of the current regulations on it,
Okay.
Public Act 17-160. And it references what the applicant or owner can do. And can't do. What they can do is offer tastings, which is a phrase you used, free of charge.
They can.
You can,
Okay.
but it seems like according to this, you cannot charge fee for those tastings. Just bringing this up for thought or discussion at some other point. It also says that you may serve beer by the glass from a bottle, which to me says it's not really a place that you go buy beer and leave, but you can stay there, hang out, drink, hopefully responsibly, not get drunk, not go drive somewhere. That's followed by a statement that says, a town may prohibit any such offering, tasting, or selling at retail at premises within such town to which a manufacturer permit for a farm brewery has been issued. So maybe I'm misunderstanding this. You might know this better than I do, but to me, this sounds like this planning and zoning commission has some control over what's sold and consumed there.
Can I see that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. What's the date on it? Oh, 2017. Okay.
That's not been updated, is it?
So yes. And here's initially why I thought you were talking about something else. So the term farm brewery has something that the legislature, I have state senator here, the legislature has been tackling and trying to figure out for some time. There's two different meanings of farm brewery. One is, I think in around 2017, the state created a special liquor permit called a farm brewery. So it was an application from DCP, and it was a liquor permit and treated like a liquor permit, which is, they revoked that. So I don't know why they did. My understanding is that they actually intend to create sort of regulatory process, but it never happened. So the farm brewery liquor permit was created. It no longer exists. The farm brewery designation that's referenced in the correspondence with the Department of Agriculture is that on a parallel path, the Department of Agriculture created a farm brewery certification. That's a marketing. So, you know, when you drive around Connecticut, you see the Connecticut Grown logo, your farm wineries, it's a special, like logo that you can put on your products and on your signs and on your farms. That means that you meet the marketing qualifications as a farm brewery. So that was very important to the Department of Agriculture that Treehouse achieve a farm brewery marketing certification and that they applied for it. So it's actually not the farm brewery liquor permit that was in that public act, but where the correspondence in the Department of Agriculture is their marketing certification. And we actually, the site got certified as a farm cidery. And the only reason at this time they couldn't apply for a farm brewery certification is because they need a malt liquor permit from PCP to do so. So we told them, they wanted to apply and said, we can't because the statute requires that we have a liquor permit for beer. We can't get a liquor permit for beer until you tell us we're good under the deed restriction. And so like, then they said, okay, fine. But once you're able to get a liquor permit, you have to agree that you're gonna apply for and maintain the level of farm. It requires you to have a significant percentage of your products originate from a Connecticut farm, so that you'll maintain this level of products to maintain a farm brewery marketing certification.
To keep it in Connecticut,
Yeah.
as opposed to getting agriculture from somewhere that's a little bit warmer.
I went down that I had that exact same analysis that you just had when I started working on Because I also pulled up that old public act and I was like, why don't we just get a farm brewery liquor permit? And then I realized it was revoked and this whole thing.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yes.
If I could just take one more minute.
Sure, but you'll owe me.
Just run this kind of informal, non-binding
Yes.
session. I just thought I'd share some thoughts that I had. And you really don't have to respond to them. But, we've got this broader mission, and as you know, we consider all sorts of things, new regulations coming out by the state, and as you know, cannabis is now legal in Connecticut. And we, like many cities and towns, are having to put together regulations. So I kind of see a pretty close parallel between cannabis and what you folks are looking to do. It's a crop that's grown on a farm. It's processed, and again, I'm talking about beer and cannabis. It's processed, packaged, and it's sold. I think the concern that at least I have, and maybe others, is that if they were to take their product home, beer or pot, and consume it, that's fine, that's their business. When it's consumed on site, maybe irresponsibly, that's when it's an issue, at least for me, whether it's beer, pot, or whatever. Because at that point, sure, you're safe, you're on your property, but again, if you're irresponsible, once you leave your property, you're still in our town, but you're on our public roads, in our neighborhoods, going by our homes, playgrounds, businesses. So how the consumption of alcohol in your case is going to be controlled or limited or monitored and avoid those drunk drivers is a big issue for us. Last thing I want to say on this for now, again, very formally, is you can do all those things, grow it, process it, package it, sell it. And I believe all that's agriculture. I really don't have an issue with that. The consumption on site, that's not agriculture necessarily. That may fall into some other category here. Retail, restaurant, entertainment. Agriculture doesn't demand that products consumed on site, whether it's fruit, vegetables, dairy, beef, or beer. So I think at that point, it falls onto planning and zoning. That may require a special permit because on-site consumption, I think, exceeds the agricultural.
So I'm would happily tackle responsible alcohol service. So without a doubt, the number one complaint across anything at Treehouse is that we cut people off. That we have a maximum of 3 beverages on any of our sites. It is universally the number one complaint at Treehouse. Why can't I have another beer? Responsible alcohol service is something that we take incredibly seriously. Every single one of our team members and associates is certified in responsible alcohol service. Including Eric, and including myself, and including Callie, and we work in offices. Soup to nuts, that is not something that we mess around with in any way, shape, or form. So we're very proud to have those complaints. We're very proud that there's no gray line for us there, and it's just incredibly important to us. And we have never had an incident. One.
We've all heard of pre-gaming. Drinking before you go to an event, or I don't know, it's just, I think it's a different ballgame when it's consumed on site.
Well, in response to pre-gaming, I would argue that all of our staff are certified in some way to work. We do not overserve, so if someone came to our site drunk, we would not.
And also, this is the beer that's being produced on the farm is not. So typically the already visiting with the player beer as well. It's not an individual who college student be gaining a trip to the group. Like if the person actually wants to have a nice time on the farm in Connecticut, enjoy a couple of beers. Yeah, you're you're not, my. They're there to have a really nice
And
time.
if we were, as Ally.
Yeah,
Had acknowledged, like with this training and the certification that we all do annually, that we have to be certified annually, that training is to recognize that someone has been pre-gaming or, and that includes. Have they ate, have they slept, did they take, to the bed, I mean, all these, we train the gamut of all these things to recognize those times, because, we take this incredibly seriously. It is our business. It's not something that we would jeopardize anywhere for anything.
and to your point about, well, it's on-site consumption, suddenly rendering this no longer an agricultural. It's that, as the Department of Agriculture assessed, that the beer being made is a product of the farm. It's just like any other agricultural product, and so that's just like people enjoying apples on the farm when they go apple picking or pumpkin patch or something like that, is that they're enjoying an agricultural product from the farm. And for a couple of years now, and so that's why I think the Department of Agriculture was giving us so much time on this, continuing to give attention to it, and actually feel so excited about it, because it actually is a truly wonderful way for the public to participate and support Connecticut farm. Is, I mean, I don't think we want these sites closed off entirely to the public where they just sell these products in stores, but this really opens up Connecticut farmland to the public. People can see how beautiful this place is and how beautiful Woodstock is, and enjoy a cider or a beer or two sitting outside on a nice day. That, it's really intended to be accessory and complement a working farm. But
Thank you.
You all set? I'll let Phil, and if you don't, afterwards, I've got a few questions, if you don't mind. Yep. So some of these I know the answer to, but I'm gonna ask them anyway, some I don't. I understand that there is a distinction between growing, processing, and selling. And I believe the Commissioner of Agriculture understands that too. He does note that they found that the processing beer on your PDR farmland using agricultural products is accordance with the reported development rights. So there is definitely a distinction between, you know, growing the stuff there and processing it versus what you're doing with the sales. It's not a semantic distinction. It is definitely a distinction. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to that. You're doing cidery now. Evidently, you'll have to get a liquor permit to do which is very clearly stated by DOAG, but that's obvious. You have to. Anyway, you know, with that. But it seemed, but since you're doing the cidery now, then we're in a prelim discussion, so you don't actually have an application. Spell out all the details, so I understand why there's some things. When I'm thinking through what is ag, what isn't ag, our definition here is basically saying it's whatever the state definition is as amended. We did that on purpose because it just makes sense. We know cannabis, for example, is not agriculture. The state clearly does not define it as such. That bill, which is a monster bill, has many parts to it that quote unquote legalized cannabis in the state clearly doesn't, you know, make it ag. So this is something that, you know, is different, and you'll have to get your liquor license, things like that. One of the questions I have, and I don't have a copy of it, I don't have the file, is separate from an acting zoning enforcement officer having granted previously in 19 about the, this was more for the cider, when there was a, you got a permit from the Liquor Control Division. What permit do you actually have to sell the cider? Was there something granted by the town? I don't recollect. I don't have the file. But was there an actual permit that you had signed by the Land Use Department of Zoning Enforcement officer, not signing off on what was done by the Liquor Control Division? That's different. Something saying about the sale. Because if you have something from the town saying that you're allowed to sell the hard cider, then if one, I'm just thinking different ways than selling beer, would that then follow the same type of permitting process? I don't recollect there was a special permit for sale of hard cider. I don't recollect, however, what permit was granted. I'm not sure this commission granted it or it was granted by the ZBO at the time. Do you recollect or have that file? I don't have access to the files upstairs, so I don't know, and certainly I think that's helpful for us to know what process was done by the town relative to be able to sell the hard cider that you're doing now. Clearly, there would have had to be something
So,
discussed with or granted by the town.
so what my understanding is that the zoning and enforcement officer, I was Mike
And he
D'Amato.
was acting zoning.
Yeah, so he signed the liquor permit application for different.
Which is required to submit to the state for state permit.
Right, but as far as to sell hard cider in this town,
And then he also signed off on the license.
well, that's separate. Well, actually, somebody
Yes.
else did. He did not.
Oh, that was a different zoning enforcement officer.
Correct. Tino LaJoy did, but that's a separate question I have about why they're paying this relative to sale. But was there a permit by the zoning enforcement office, the land use department? Do you know? I don't know. That's
No,
why I asked.
I'm not aware of one, and my understanding is that there wouldn't to be because it was ag. So it was part of the agricultural use.
So do you have communication from the town saying, yes, that was okay?
I believe we have email correspondence that says all further questions relate.
Okay, I'm just,
I'm
Yeah.
having to look.
Yeah.
through.
just because it's not in what you said, I'm not saying something wrong was done.
Yeah.
I just
But
don't
we
know
don't
what
have a
the
sign
permit was. I know it wasn't a special permit.
But
and I
it's
know
not-
we didn't grant it as a commission, so we
But-
went through that office.
That's actually kind of why we're here tonight, is because it's an agricultural use, a permit is not required. Normally what, for something like beer, I probably say this might request a certificate of zoning compliance, but if it's a permitted use, if it's agriculture, it's a permitted use and a special permit wouldn't be required for it. It's an
No, I'm not
agricultural.
asking about special.
Yeah.
But
No,
So essentially, I believe where Megan is
Yeah.
going with this is by having the zoning enforcement officer grant us that certificate of zoning compliance, they agreed that the tasting was an agricultural use, because otherwise we wouldn't need it.
Okay, I just wanted to know, because I don't have it. I'm looking at our regs that does say agriculture uses are permitted uses in the community district. That I have no doubt of. I
exactly.
just don't know what was granted.
Mhm.
I don't have the file.
Yeah, no, the
So-
only permits that needed to issue for the existing cidery, my understanding, is the liquor permit, which required the zoning enforcement officer. No other permits were required to operate, because it's an agricultural.
Well, I'd like to see, we need to get some clarification on, so we actually know what was submitted. I think we're gonna have to find that out from the land. use department. You know, Delia?
No, I wasn't the zoning
Okay.
officer then.
I just don't know.
I was the zoning officer from 2006 to 2018. So I wasn't when your paperwork for the liquor license was signed. But in general, about other farms in Woodstock, a farm when they opened or if they changed from dairy to whatever, even when Farmer's Cow and I've never said this before, but I'll admit, I don't drink dairy, so don't shoot me. But with the Farmer's Cow, I believe they sell other Farmer's Cow products on the property, including things that they don't grow that come out of cows. So, when they change, they've never come before planning and zoning for a permit. When there was a maple syrup business, and I brought them into the commission for a permit, I was told they don't need a permit because they're agriculture. So
I have confirmation of that.
agricultural in Woodstock has never needed a permit for the use. They needed permits for structure. So if they were building a barn or a lean-to, greenhouse, anything like that, they needed a zoning permit for the structure.
Yeah, we do have.
So I have confirmation right here, from Tina LaJoy.
Yeah.
That the cider can operate as we are currently operating. She says, yes,
So she's confirming with Delia just that, that it's just an agricultural.
What's the date of that?
that was in
I just,
twenty twenty, November 16th, 2020.
okay,
Yeah.
I just don't have a copy of what it was. We have to look at this.
Absolutely. Yep, this
Because I
is
think
the-
that's
this is the
helpful.
Email
Yeah.
correspondence between Tina and our one of our former employees.
So you guys will-
Yeah, very, very new.
So the whole reason I asked is that it's important so that for me to know, or I think all of us, just because if there was a certain process put into place of the town through its acting zoning enforcement officer at that time, but still he was our designated agent for this commission. Granted, saying yes, it meant the zoning of the town, and he signed off on it, which clearly he did. It also says here, I certify that I'm familiar with the zoning ordinances and bylaws of the city / town identified in item number 2, it identifies Woodstock of this application. They do not prohibit the sale of alcoholic beverages. So I think he's saying that our ordinances and bylaws don't prohibit it. And, you know, so that was not right out. But I just like to know what exactly was granted, because that's helpful for what process are we following. Just following what your argument is. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying, if you're saying this is similar to ag or hard cider, and you want to follow the same process, I'm just interested in what actually the town granted. It didn't come through this commission. So if that was the process followed, and and if that were to be the process, let's say, then that could be one way of handling it, because it's already done that. Separate from whatever, no offense to the DOAG commissioner, and I do know, I've had meetings with him, but he doesn't control zoning, you know, as you know, so I'm just trying to see where we are with a consistent process. You know, one of the other things I'm thinking of, and again, I'm just raising this, I'm not saying this is preliminary discussion, is we do define that in the community district, permitted uses do include agriculture and agricultural uses. They're subject to all other applicable requirements of these regs, including not limited to the requirement for zoning, where applicable. So we do allow agriculture and agricultural uses, not non-ag things that happen on an ag setting. That's a bit different, but something that is ag and ag uses, we don't list that as requiring a special permit. We do require other things. You know, that gets to the prior point that if you guys start turning it into a retail store, you're selling all sorts of things with a label on it, and it's not ag. Well, we know that's very different. And we've had those discussions when we've been discussing about updating ag regulations anyway. But it does seem to me that, you know, ag and ag uses would not necessarily require a special permit if this by extension is considered ag. Then we don't require a special, you know, permit, you know, for that. If you have something on that, otherwise I have it.
Right, I was thinking that I wasn't a zoning officer then, but perhaps they were thinking they didn't need a permit because there's no standards for agriculture other than the minimum lot has a 2.5 acres. There's no setback, there's no destructive standards for the structure, but not for the use. And you're talking about non-residential uses, there's a whole, but that's for the structure.
Yeah.
So we have.
That's why I was asking about, you know, what was the permit? Well, that's why I was asking if the CEO granted a permit, and interested this, it was done, it was done.
It was decided that a permit wasn't needed because it's all filled with agriculture. They still needed a liquor permit. Yeah, boards of health, you know, still needed to certify all that, but for zoning purposes, there was no change. There was no required.
And if there's documentation on the file, I think it's just helpful for us.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
wanted to finish, and I still have some questions.
At this point, what did we make Taylor Brook do when they did their?
They built one brand new.
They were determined to be more than agricultural because they were selling. it.
That was a special permit process.
Were they also on deed restricted farmland?
No,
So they wanted to, so it's just an extension.
but it's a separate property.
Yeah.
They just share a driveway, just not relevant to the separate property, two separate individual properties. But my point was that the non-residential uses, which are not agricultural, they're all the businesses in town, they have other standards, size of the building, the setbacks, the height, all that other stuff. So if you're gonna propose one of those, you have to abide by all those standards. Agriculture doesn't have those kinds of standards. So what would the zoning officer?
Right, that's why I'm asking the question, because if a process was done, so to speak, prior about the cidery, and selling of cider, hard cider. And that went through the zoning enforcement officer at the time. He determined that it's ag, that there wasn't anything else needed for permits. The state has to grant its liquor license. We don't control that. Anything you have to do with DOAG, even though it's interrelated, we're not granting that and they're not granting our stuff. It's just kind of things happening at the same time. But evidently he felt that it did meet whatever was needed, and that's why there must be something in the file where he must have signed off saying doesn't need anything else or something. I don't have the file. We can always access that whenever, Dave just back to the office to see what is actually in there. But it sounds like there was, again, there was no special permit that came to us, and there was no non-residential zoning permit to us at that time. So one of the things I'm thinking of, I'm just throwing these things out, is if that was the process, would that be the same process we're handling now, if indeed we're saying that the beer is considered ag, that be the same process? That's one avenue. Okay. Even if one considers, well, a special permit gives us the opportunity to ask lots of questions, get lots of info, put conditions, let's say. We can do that with the non-zoning residential permit as well. That we have well crafted in our regulations that for any of those permits, we feel we need additional information, we can ask it. As long as it's within our statutory authority, and our statutory authority is very broad by the enabling acts of the state, I think for good reasons. So even if we did, let's say, a non-zoning, non-residential zoning permit, I'm not saying that that's the process to follow, I'm just saying, even if we did that, we can still ask all sorts of questions, get all sorts of information, and deal with stuff. The issue to me is, I don't think it sounds like it requires a special permit, just the way I'm thinking. The issue is, would we be consistent with the process that was followed for what was already granted for hard cider? And that's the process to follow here, then, this commission, can suggest that, as far as we're following the same process. That's why I just like to know what was signed off on. And maybe that was just as simple as what he said was, it's fine, there's no issue. No other permit is needed, don't have to bring it to the commission, it's the regulations. He's within his authority to sign off on it, which we do grant the ZBOs a lot of authority as our agent. They're there, but not every day, they're there, 2 days a week. Right now, so the issue is, do we need any other type to fall under the same process? I'm just raising that for us to consider what was already done, before. I do understand that you're not able to give us a lot of real specific numbers, and again, you don't have an application for us, so I understand that. And I think in some ways, it's good to hear some of the general concerns, but also it's good for us to kind of have this free-flowing discussion, so that way you're not bound to like one specific number. But 49 is, of interest, and I'm sure, not going to want to exceed that for safety reasons, although there is a difference between in the building and on site as far as the wording. So I think that would have to be clarified, because it does talk about maximum on-site occupancy, but it sounds like you guys aren't coming anywhere close to exceeding that now. Now, whether or not you might beer, that's a story. But the other thing I want to mention is, I know we're mindful of this, is, and you've said this before, is nothing stays the same. I won't get into comments about the more things change, the more they stay the same in the state. I'm not wearing that hat tonight. Though I do agree with your comment. But we know things change over time. For example, you guys came in, nice farmland up there, you guys are doing, what you need to do. Certainly you have to follow whatever DOAG wants, there's no question. And I'm glad you guys are successful in your various, sites, and I'm glad that you guys have interest in staying in this stuff and wanting to do things. Thank you for doing that. And also your comments are well appreciated about being mindful of the community you're in and neighbors who are, who are around you. And that's very important. We take that seriously, and I'm glad to hear that you do as well, and you'll probably get a lot more comments about that, from this commission, because we are very mindful of that, because we live in the same community. But things will change over time, just because they're changing now. You guys want to get to beer. Whereas before you were just talking about cider. So even if a permit were to be granted, say you have to come to us for a permit. We say, yeah, here's this and that. You come to us in 5 years and say, we now want to branch into some other things that, you'd have to come to us anyway, separate from whatever you're gonna do with DOAG. And I think that's an important thing. You know that, and we know that, but I think it's important for people to understand that, because whatever you're saying now and whatever may be granted tonight, there's always that opportunity to come back if things need to change. Now, DOAG may say no, but if DOAG says, yeah, it still fits within what we're overseeing, then you come to us and say, we feel we need to build an addition. Because we need to expand whatever, or mentors, whatever the right term is for the equipment. That type of stuff we have to hear about anyway. Hope we just do it. Find out if we know there's enough that happens that. But the responsible way is you would come to us and say, hey, we're successful with the beer. And we want to now expand the building. DOAG says, yes, you can do that. Certainly we would want to know if DOAG said yes or no. If they say no, you're not going to come to us. So there are those options, and we know that. So even though we can't predict the future, there is a process to come to us of doing that. To do stuff. So I think that's important for us to know when we're thinking about what your intent is now versus what might happen, later. There's also the possibility that the whole thing with doing the beer here fails. And you have to pivot to something else. You never know what happens. So, I think that it's helpful for us to keep that in mind, that there is an avenue to pursue modifications or other things. Lots of businesses have that opportunity, for us. But again, I'm just interested in what was the exact process, because I don't recollect it came to us at all, but not everything does. I think that's good. That's why we have an office to manage that. So if that was the process, I think this commission should take a look at that. See if that was the process and that process meets. Now, we would want to make certain they're consistent, but also, there are various concerns. And just a couple of follow-up questions is, if you're going to be adding beer to the tasting stuff, you're still planning to continue the hard cider, is that correct? You're not gonna say we're cutting back on hard cider to add beer in. You're gonna now be adding beer and still hope to be doing what you're doing with the hard cider. It's not a trade-off, cutting down on one and ramping up the other. You're gonna look to both.
So, the production cycle varies based on what they're growing, but because we're not adding any new equipment, we're at our capacity. So sometimes it will be cider and sometimes it will be, fermenting beer, but.
And that's an important point, that you're not adding, you're not expanding. You're not looking to build new buildings. You're not looking to say we have to double the size of the existing building. We're not looking to add new equipment, like more fermenters and things like that. You're not looking to expand the parking, that's what I understand. Type of thing. You're looking to do what you have now. You're just gonna look to add the beer into it. But for all intents and purposes, nothing else other than people can get the beer or whatever. Which I think is an important point, that we're not looking for a big expansion. You're looking to add something into your current infrastructure, is that correct?
That's correct, and so just to circle back in the simplest of terms, our breweries, brewers put this far more eloquently than I do, but we grow apples, and that apple juice that ferments and becomes hard cider. We take wort, which is sugar water, and that ferments and it becomes beer. We're using the same equipment, essentially. We're a fermenter, that's what's happening on the farm.
And then get to the point that was raised about sale of alcohol. The state definitely has rules and regulations, no question about it. I've had to delve into it since the legislature is considering lowering the blood alcohol level. I'm not certain that's going to go anywhere, but there is discussion. The state has no lack of rules, and you guys, I'm sure, know from a legal point of view, you assume a lot of liability. So someone who's responsible selling alcohol, we have restaurants that serve alcohol. There is a liability you assume. It's not that a person driving drunk, suddenly the town assumes the liability. You guys are well aware of liability. In fact, I know for a fact you're well aware of it, having read through proceedings that went on in Massachusetts to get your liquor license. That you're well aware of. Massachusetts has no lack of law and rules. So, yes, you can't prevent someone from drinking too much other than you're clearly looking to do about minimizing. But, you know, there's only so much one can do that does come down to personal responsibility. You know, to me, I understand that there is a concern, but the liability is yours, you know, in a sense, not the town's in that regard. Sounds like you have measures in place in your current facilities to attend to that liability, be mindful of what might happen. So it is driving under the influence, you know, when they leave your facility, it sounds like you have rules and standard operating procedures. And you're gonna sell beer through the Woodstock facility or farm. I imagine you're gonna be doing what needs to be done with standard operating procedures and stuff. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I assume it, but that's why I'm just wanting to make sure it's clear, you know. So it sounds like to me, trying to, for lack of a better term, ferment this down. You're looking just to not expand your infrastructure. You're not looking to bring in hundreds and hundreds of new people only for beer. You're looking to add beer a limited way, right? To limited hard cider. You're not looking to make so much beer that you're gonna be having tractor trailers and tanker trucks hauling it out day and night to go to your other facilities, which I can't imagine the farm in Woodstock would even come anywhere close to what you do in those facilities. You're looking to really just maintain it, you know, as is, and keep it there. And when it comes to traffic, you're not looking to be having big, gigantic, truck traffic. We don't limit trucks on the road anyway, per se, but it's really more, you'll have people coming in, but you're gonna be limited. Absolutely. And even if you have to institute the reservation. I know this, but I just want to ask it so it's clear. Your entryway and exit is the driveway on Joy Road. That's where you're directing people in and out. Not on Pulpit Rock. Right, that's what I thought. So you're not looking to change that.
No.
So everything with the current in and out that you're doing now, none of that changes. You know, at all. Okay.
Same as the last.
Okay, so I think that's just important, so we have an idea of what your attention is. Now, because you want an app, you know, all these things we think about, because we're charged with public health, public welfare, public safety, huge. And we're very mindful of, but I think that kind of in my mind is what you're proposing. But not anything that's real gigantic at this point. Something changes later, it changes later, and you have to go through a process.
And we need to define what success looks like. We don't know what we don't know yet.
Nobody knows what success is. I'm fond of telling people, you can't legislate enough. You never. And we don't get into your business plan in that way. I hope you're successful. It certainly sounds like you are. And I'm glad for that. I'm glad that you decided to make Woodstock one of your homes. It's nice. Thank you for doing that.
I think part of the success of the farm so far is what Eric has done, and when we talked about what he's done with the plants and our apples and kind of bringing that farm back to life.
And bringing some of the old fruit trees back alive.
Yeah.
And you've certainly heard a lot of concerns raised by commissioners, because we're mindful of various things, concerns of people in the community, neighbors. You know, all of that stuff we have to be mindful of. So that's why freedom discussion is good. And we can always have you come back to all of our meetings. We can make arrangements for what we bring. Our schedule is usually the first and third Thursday.
Understood.
Give me your email and we'll remember. Every Wednesday. We could. I'm not saying to put all of our pictures on, you know, the bottles or the other mugs, but you know. So I just wanted to bring up some of those points as far as what where I'm thinking. And again, I'm just interested in what was exactly the process last time, and do we match the same process? I just don't have that file, but that's why I raised it. Delia?
So I was just wondering if you could go over all the things you're growing, all those fruits. Are you selling them to anybody for any purpose other than making them into cider and beer?
We only use them in the treehouse ecosystem.
And so
So-
you have like 14 different kinds of fruits and trees and bushes and whatnot.
Yep, yeah, so 1,200 fruit trees, 5,000 berry plants, 1,400 grapes. Hops, as mentioned before, a small amount of hops. We have little like weird, interesting things like aronia berries, high bush cranberries, yellow raspberries, gooseberries, black currants.
But all of those things at harvest are not sold to anyone for any purpose other than making cider and beer.
We've sold vegetables to Vanilla Bean and 85 Main.
But all those fruits are used in the fermented beverages that you're making.
Correct.
So like, obviously a lot of agriculture to make.
It
So it
it
really
is
sounds
a
like you're farming.
large amount for a small yield, but also I'm sure there have been some experiments. Maybe weren't suitable.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, to give you a little bit being agriculture, there's one person who works in the fermentory. And then there's 4 of us that work full-time farming. And then we bring on another 4 people for summer help. So during the summer, we have 8 people farming and 1 person fermenting. So a large majority of our time there is spent out in the field.
So what you're doing there, you're using the product. You know, that there, it sounds like you're doing nothing. Capacity to start selling abroad, you're using it.
Yeah, and all those numbers sound like a lot, but. And it is a lot, but the amount that they would need in Charlton to put it in the beer is just. It's just we need 400,000 acres, they have, they have tanks the size of like half the size of the fermentory.
Yeah.
In Woodstock, so it's this, like, he has 5-gallon batches of cider that he pressed, on like a little small thing.
And you'd be amazed how many apples it takes.
Yeah, and like, to give you the idea of, 5 gallons versus, the smallest batch in Charlton is, I think it's the equivalent of 120 kegs.
Yeah.
So, there's just completely different ecosystems.
That's
so,
Charlton.
Yeah, that's Charlton, yeah. Yeah, so like, just, the idea that we have these little small one-off kind of batches that might not ever happen again is kind of interesting. We had extra hot peppers last year, so we made a cider with hot peppers, which is kind of interesting. Basically he gets to be really, really creative in there. And
Well, I
then,
can understand the experimentation, some of it works, some of it doesn't. One
yeah,
of the examples I like to cite is Ocean Spring from that one.
oh, that doesn't sound good.
It come out of me. So, but you're not looking now, and I know this came up prior to preliminary discussion. You're not looking to start getting into some places where you're going to be selling food, like a little cafe or a mini restaurant. I know that was discussed before, so there were questions about that before. My understanding was you weren't looking into that previously. You're not looking to doing that now. And then as far as the entertainment, which you did get a permit for, is that something you're doing quote unquote now or no? Okay. It's not like big concerts and stuff. And my understanding is it's low key. Yeah, I saw that.
And we have a concert venue in Massachusetts.
Yes.
where we have our-
And you're not looking to change any of that here. So it really sounds like the only thing you're really looking to change is to make the beer and to sell the beer for tastings in a limited way.
to make
It
it
really
different
comes
than
down to
usual.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Those are all the things I just wanted to say at this point in time. And again, I appreciate you guys coming. I think it's good for us to hear what some of your thinking is, for you to hear what some of our thinking. I mean, this last preliminary discussion was back in like 2019.
Sure.
you know,
Yes.
So, I think it's good for us to go through. Mark, did you have questions? And then Joe.
Yeah. Couple of questions, just, trying to wrap my head around the size of this whole thing, this type of stuff. But in the wording in here, everything's gonna be small batch and limited production. Sure, is there a
that a technical term? Is there a specific size of the small batch? I mean, obviously, this isn't, we already said a little bit, it's not like, in Charlton, small batch is mega.
So happy to, do the math on that, but just our equipment calculator, it's less than 1% of what we do.
Well, I mean, I just didn't know, is there a set size? What is small batch mean? Is that, 20 gallons? Is
Yeah, I
that,
do.
what is small batch?
But we can, certainly, if there is a definition out there, get that for you. But I would say, for the purposes of our argument, small batch is basically because we are limited by the crops that we yield. So we are only able to produce as much as we could grow.
So for example, if they grew X number of blackberries, that was a very successful yield for blackberries. Many bottles later they could get.
All right, no, just the way it was worded here, so I didn't know if there is a
Yeah,
certain designation that.
this is a regulatory law.
I know there's another word, crap, but I don't know about small batch.
Yeah.
So I can find it.
And also because as we pointed out before, it's not adding any equipment.
Right,
And
yeah.
so we don't have the ability to make more than we already were doing pretty
What-
much for the cider.
Mhm.
That would take adding more equipment.
So the cider, I think you had said was it the projected for 2020 or what's the actual, it was 500 barrels?
That was projected. That
So
was-
what was the actual,
I don't think it was-
I would
is
imagine,
there a
yeah.
projected for 2022 and 2023?
We can-
I don't know. I don't know if I get that.
None of us.
He's gonna be maxed out at 30 people on the day once, so I don't.
So and then just to kind of follow up, if projected was 500 barrels of cider, is it only 500 barrels per year?
For the year.
Is that, so it'll be 200 cider, 300 beer,
So,
or is it 500 cider, 1,500 beer?
No,
Well, I don't know how many hours a day you gotta
Yeah, so
run
that-
5,500.
do a lot with what Eric can grow and what, I don't know.
what tastes good with beer.
It tastes good with beer, and so that fluctuates, say. Then that because it's agriculture, we are at the, I guess, benefit of Eric's talents.
And the
mercy of the sun and rain.
We are also limited by the number of barrels we have. So to ferment beer takes time. Each process is a couple weeks, or even cider is a couple weeks because you have to let it get an alcohol content. So we are limited to however many barrels that we have to do that in. So I would say, depending on, again, what fruit tastes good with what product, we'd be at about 500, depending on, again, what tastes good.
And then that's, I didn't know the size of the building that, you've got the one building, you're not gonna
Mhm.
expand, so.
Right.
if Building's full of 500, that's
Mhm.
pretty good. Yes, that's where you stay. But one other, just the numbers keep bugging me. The 49 number that we heard before, that's inside the building. But then overall, will be more than that because they're gonna go in and out. You've got a ticket system. How many tickets a day are you selling?
So, that would depend on the demand. When we have a CSA, we kind of have a ring of people spread out over the time with the CSA. Was open, but as I said, we're incredibly interested in having environment. So if we have a Saturday and 20 people would like to come, then we can have 20 reservations. But if we decided that 19 people, this is the stuff. We can't, we can't, go to a restaurant, you sit down at the table that you're sitting. at.
Right,
We
just,
have the ability to conform.
well, like you had said, 49 max inside.
Yeah.
It will be more than that on premises because they're gonna be able to go in and out. So I
It
just
would be,
wondered what your thoughts were, what the total number.
the limit would be in the reservation 49. So once number 49 booked for that time period, we would not allow any more reservations. But I also want to clarify the difference between a reservation and a ticket. So we use tickets primarily to account for the 3-year maximum that we would allow on site. The reservation would be for a designated period of time, in which we use a 2-hour window. So you sign up like a restaurant, you say, I'm coming at 5 o'clock, that's my dinner time.
Yep.
You're coming to the beer at 3 in the afternoon, it's a nice Sunday. You're there as one of 49 who are allowed to enjoy the property, because I would hate for at any one given time, 51 people be in that building because we let them on site.
Right.
So that is why we would cap the reservation at 49. So
So we successfully used this system when we opened our Deerfield property. When we opened here, we used the reservation system, and then in Sandwich, we throttle it on and off depending on business demand and seasonality. And so it's proven system, and our guests have been great. Just like the restaurants are great when we don't show up at 7 o'clock demanding a reservation, that we don't have people are. This is one thing that the pandemic and the came out of it with the reservation. People are very, very comfortable, and very used to. Which is what weather and very.
And because you're limiting that, you're not expecting traffic impact in some fear.
right.
Because you're already putting a cap on things.
No, that, it sounds, I mean, the ticket idea.
Okay.
Sounds like a good idea, sounds like it's working, I just didn't know if it, what,
Yeah.
to,
So the reservation to give you your time, you can come through, and then the ticket is what caps your ability to preserve or maximum amount. So you cannot.
so you can get a reservation and then you can buy tickets for inside your reservation.
Yeah, it's an extra level of control. Exactly, but it is, I know it sounds like a one more thing, but it is that extra level of control. And then on top of that, we have a bracelet system, so if you can't go here, take my ticket, it's actually.
So I think Joe Adaletta has some more questions, unless you
Yeah,
have.
okay, no, that's,
Then I just have a
Yep,
couple
that was
of
good.
follow-ups after Joe, but Joe Adaletta?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, just a couple of quick questions, I think. One, want to confirm, you probably have a bottling or canning operation there already for the cider?
Yeah. Eric, maybe you could-
Yes, yeah, we have everything that's bottled is bottled by hand. And then we do have a small canner as well.
Okay.
Mobile.
And the tasting that is being talked about, that would be tastings of only the products made in Woodstock, not something brought in from the other breweries or cideries?
So to answer that question, because this is my wheelhouse, we are not legally able to bring any product from Charlton across the state border. If we did so, we'd have to go through a wholesaler, and that is a step that as Treehouse, we do not take, we sell what we make at location. In Woodstock.
That applies to the tasting?
That would apply to the tasting as well. Anything that you were tasting or buying would be.
Or buying. Okay, the sales was the second question, but you answered that already. Is the intention to have food trucks or a food truck or multiple food trucks on site?
I don't have a food truck to get up that driveway.
Maybe
I
a
guess that-
trailer, you know?
That's a no.
Not the word, yeah.
It sounds like historically we never asked for that.
I
Okay.
remember previously you asked for it, in the discussion.
Thank you, Jeff. Those are the questions. Thank you, folks from Treehouse.
And
Thank you.
I just have a couple of quick questions relative to the environmental law. I'm sure DOAG has looked at this anyway. But to do what you're doing, since you're not expanding anything, putting in more fermenters or whatever, there's really no additional environmental impact on the land. I mean, I'm sure DOAG is real concerned about any adverse impact on the land up there, but nothing that you're expecting would be any adverse impact on the land, the air, the water, that type of thing with what you're doing. You're just adding in the beer, handling whatever you're doing, how you have to permit wastewater and everything like that. I know there's rules and regulations, on that stuff with the state anyway. But all that stuff you have to adhere to, so it doesn't sound like DOAG raised any of those concerns, or there's anything else that you're seeing would be any significant impact beyond. You're limiting the number of people, you're looking to do it at a small scale at this point in time, so it doesn't sound like there's any adverse environmental impact that you would need to, if you submit an application or it goes through the town and whatever the process is, you're gonna have to do some type of study or anything like that. It wasn't anything that DOAG asked.
No, it wasn't a concern for the Department of Agriculture, and my understanding, again, and I'm probably the least qualified here, but, it's the production of the water that increases in like even the water usage, I guess, and that comes from offsite. So this is the situation, Treehouse obtains the wort offsite, brings offsite for ferment with the fruits and other products from the farm, and so this is a circumstance where the fermentation can occur on site, but the actual product actually isn't coming from elsewhere, so it's a nice benefit.
Well, not impactful, but
Yeah.
rather, we wouldn't be utilizing any extra groundwater to produce these items, so in times of drought or anything, the water is included in the wort, and that comes from Charlton to be used, so we wouldn't be using up our irrigation pond or anything like that. Everything would be pretty much sustainable as is.
And just to keep a dead horse on this, Treehouse doesn't want to do anything that's gonna in any way hurt the viability of the crop. So
Mhm.
that's the goal of the site here and what really bigger.
And then when you bring the ward in, is that gonna be a lot of truck traffic, or what are we talking about? Or these, I mean, we have dairy tankers that drive around, but, you know, that's one thing, but if you're not talking like lots of traffic
No.
multiple times a day to bring the ward in. It sounds like there's times that you bring it in and then things have to sit
Absolutely.
in barrels for a while that you can't actually do anything. There,
Come in.
until the barrel does whatever it does, and you deal with the barrel, you're going to be limited. That's the rate limiting steps. It's not, it sounds like you're not bringing in truckloads of wort every day. You just don't have that capacity to handle
Correct.
it, so,
And just it comes in on a tote, like a
okay.
container, not.
Square.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a container.
Is that 30 gallons or 75 gallons?
So there really, there's no impact there. For what you're bringing in,
Correct.
break comes in and it's not something that you're talking about.
It would be no different.
Truck
than
traffic every day,
The apple juice.
okay. You know, as far as how we think about the infrastructure,
Mhm.
you know, plus, you know, technically 169. That's state. So DOT worries about that, yeah, like Route 169, you know, it goes into Massachusetts for a while. That's state DOT. Joy Road itself is county.
Mhm.
Where to get to it. Okay, no, those are the things that I asked, and again, I just thinking that if there was a process that was followed before, we can see exactly what was done in the files, then something that is to follow a similar way, one would try to be consistent, at least that's how I think, but, you know, certainly, you know, whatever, if other commissioners have other thoughts, and this is for us to have the discussion.
Mhm.
But do you have any other questions for us, or did we
Covered lots.
cover whatever
Yeah,
questions you
thank you
wanted
so much.
to
Really.
discuss with us?
I don't think so. Thank you for giving this opportunity. It's been really helpful.
This is why we encourage freelance discussion,
Yeah, it's nice.
so we can have this type of stuff, we can hear various things
Mhm.
from us and back and forth.
Yeah.
Did I miss anybody, commissioners, for questions? We're online here. Right, Joe, I know Doug it looks like Doug had a leave, but we covered you guys. You don't have your hands up anymore. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming to us. I guess what will happen is
Yeah.
we'll have to see where we stand with the process. We don't need to clarify that one tonight.
I don't think,
What?
I don't think you know.
Right.
More.
Direction would be great.
Yeah.
I'll call Dan. Yeah.
Well, I think we just have to see. I think we'll have to find out when Dan is, well, Dan's back on Tuesday.
Tuesday, right?
So, what?
March, April. Right. Not Tuesday.
Tuesday is when he's back.
Okay.
We're not open Fridays. And
All right.
he's here Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Thank
He can see what was actually in the file.
Yep.
And see what was actually done before.
Okay, that can guide
And
it.
one can certainly write it down. Depending upon what it is you want to do, one can see where we stand. They all need to be-
Why if they call me, but more of a zoning officer.
Apply some permits for us and those some others. So that's why I asked. So, but she's friendly, so you know.
After people come.
Yeah, Dan, yeah. that's-
You could hear through the discussion. Then I can't hurt. So, yeah, I think at this point, then it's really where exactly one goes with what type of process, and then, we take it, from there.
Thank you all
Thank you.
for your time. Yeah, I know this is took a while. but thank you. That's basketball.
I appreciate members of the public who came.
Thank you.
It's the process that runs different than other things. It is still nevertheless, I'm glad you came. We're able to hear what was being discussed and answered, so thank you for doing that, and whoever had asked about wanting to see slides. We'll ask for that to be put up, or we'll ask for him, Dan. So we'll ask for the town to put that up online. I think we have to go into our website. There's this thing that shows documents for meetings.
Yeah.
And that stuff gets put. So
Yeah,
we'll
wait
ask
till
them.
next-
Right. And we'll ask them to do that, so you can see that stuff. These are public documents.
Absolutely.
The plan.
Usually we try to put everything on line at rate. Yep, because we do try to. Thank you for coming,
Yeah. Well,
and again, we appreciate you being part of this stuff.
yeah.
Turning left, right. Bucks. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
There's some-
Yeah, $100 a beer.
Thank you.
Well, have a good night. So at this time, that was. It's 5 of 10. Well. If it doesn't work, it's right twice.
I don't think it's an hour close, it's never right.
Yeah, well. So at
We
this.
ready to get in the fall?
Unless the state decides to get rid of daylight savings time, so someone who wants to push for that. Get rid of it. So it is annoying, however, to have to run around changing it. So at this point, we have old business Airbnbs, but at this hour, I'm not certain how much we're gonna get into it. What is the will of the commission? Well, I always say whenever we put things on our monthly business meeting, we do have to attend to other things first, like new business and further discussions or applications, so we never know. We try to put some of these things on. We're not, our April 13th meeting is an annual legal training session. We decided that we're gonna try for the April 20th meeting to to bring back our review of cannabis. Commercial cannabis.
Doesn't the town like to be out here by then?
Well, they like us to be out by a certain hour. But also realistically, if we were to get into Airbnbs, what do we feel? Are we really gonna be able to do it? Because if we just get into it for like 2 minutes, that's not
No,
what
it's
the
not.
course is.
I think.
Because we're gonna need to spend some more time. We wanna look at, I think, which town do we wanna look at?
Ashford,
Ashford, yes, you raised that, didn't you, Joe?
yeah, Ashford and Stony.
Yeah, so we were gonna wanna put that up on the screen and start going through like we're doing with cannabis. So if we don't feel we're really gonna be able to do it any justice, then right now, we're not gonna be able to do commercial cannabis and Airbnb in one meeting. Plus, we need to make certain any drafts we're coming up with, Delia has time to put together to do realistic. So if we're gonna take backup Airbnb, that would be at our first Thursday meeting. We already are slated to do commercial cannabis again. Provided what we have for applications and stuff at the March 20th. So unless there's an objection, it sounds like we'll have to hold for right now on Airbnb.
Or should we we bought ourselves more time on the cannabis, correct?
We did, but we've also had to extend the moratorium several times to buy us.
I did the Airbnb situation just may start coming into season as well. So
Well, we'll see, but also, we also have to be mindful that if there's private rules and regulations for any of the lake tax districts, they have to handle that private. Okay, they can do things beyond what we do. Through their covenants.
Draft that I sent out for cannabis.
So do we want to stick with our plan that we're planning in our April monthly meeting to take back up cannabis?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, Joe, did you have something? I see your hands up.
Yeah, just a quick question. I can't tell, if. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, I get, I can't tell if there are members of the audience around.
Were you
Who might-
here, you guys, there's in the back, are you here for the Airbnb or? No. Okay.
No?
You're just.
Oh. Okay, I just wanted to see if they were here for the Airbnb discussion, and if not, I'm okay to postpone it.
Yeah, because at this hour, we're only gonna have so much time to delve into it, so we'll just say that we're gonna pen that one. So, for sake of time, Dan's not here. He did provide us a few things that I told him I would mention. One is we have his, as far as the office is concerned, we understand when his last day is. I haven't heard any updates from the first selectman. I've asked about where things stand. Moving forward, we do have to be mindful, and I know the first selectman is that we're gonna need a CEO. However, any CEO who might be hired temporarily, this commission has to take a vote, correct, Rich, to say he or she is our agent.
If that's what you've done in the past.
We've done that in the
then
past.
You
Okay.
should do that again.
Otherwise,
It's an unclear subject, but if that's been your practice, I would continue.
we will do like the likes of. But we'll have to see where that is, because once he's in here, mission doesn't do the work of the office. So we'll just have to see where that is, and we'll see where it stands. So we'll just have to wait for a follow-up on that. We do have from him some permits that were issued. Some of them are wetlands, which is in our jurisdiction. If anybody has any questions, can ask Dan when he's back on Tuesday. There weren't a lot of permits. As far as enforcement, two items. One is, and Delia, I think you might be able to speak to this, is the current status of Supreme Sheds. We've given them a lot of time to get their special permit to us. I think we told them we would like to have something submitted in for May. I don't know. No, but I don't know if they've talked further with you about, I know they've asked you a number of times. So really, we'll find out from Dan, but the ball is in their court. And at some point, we talked about that we were gonna give them at this point out of May to submit. We've given them a lot of time. Otherwise, there has to then be further action taken.
Are those his sheds being down there at Chase Lumber?
No.
Okay,
No, he just builds and sells from the site, that one site there,
okay.
at least in Woodstock.
That was my question.
So they're from, it's still submitting the deadline.
All right.
So we'll just follow up on that. The other is Dan had told us that he was sending a letter out to Buck Soft Serve to remind them that their home occupation expires April 27th. Is soon coming up. He did send a letter. I think this was at the desks. March 14th, he sent it to them to let them know that they have to attend to their expiring home occupation. So we'll just have to wait to see what happens with that. The ball's in their court on that one, but he did provide us the letter that he said he was going to send to CEO. So we'll just have to deal with that. Budget review and bills, I've signed a few bills. Within my authority as chair, they were all appropriate to sign. Bills. I have to sign off on the bill.
What's your limit?
I think it's 200 or 250. I think it's 250.
I look at them all, because there's been a few times in the past that we've gotten double billed. I notice it, and I say, no, I'm not signing it. So, but I notify them anyway. Beyond that, we haven't done. So, we haven't had a lot of big applications where we've got big bills that come in, but whenever that is over the limit, it comes on our agenda. So, and also if anybody who attended the Connecticut Bar Association Land Use Seminar, you can submit your registration, but don't forget to do that. And am I correct, Rich? My understanding is that more than that, 3 hours we needed, plus it met for 1 hour for affordable/fair housing, if you, for the 2 lectures. So
you're set for the next 2 years.
So I'm listed, you're listed, Joe Kulik, you're listed as we've met it. If anybody else, and we'll remind commissioners, attended, let me know, but you do need to meet those requirements this year per the state statute. What was that? I forget the PA number, but it was 21. Yeah. So just keep that in mind that you need to meet that. When you do, please, well, I'm not gonna say Dan no, but let the land use department know. I have a spreadsheet that I'm gonna send to Dan, because if the state ever asks, we just need to make search. Who knows if the state will ask?
Well, you have to report to the selectmen by March of next year as to who has and has not complied.
So
Hi, Jeff.
They're not held every year, right?
every
Every
2
other
years,
year.
right?
So.
But I think
Deadline's next March, you can't attend next year. To try to meet the requirement.
But there's other ways to meet it.
well, I think I sent you the links to the Yukon
Yep.
Clear Land Use Academy.
Yeah.
There are three videos posted there that if you watch
need
all
more
3
on?
of them, well, they're each an hour and a half.
Okay,
And one of them is on affordable and fair.
and I did that
housing.
one. Yep.
So those 3 videos will cover you as well.
And I've sent those links out. I did the one on affordable housing. It's not, massively time consuming. So if you do cover those, let us know, because yes, you'll meet your 3 hours of non-affordable fair housing and your hour of affordable fair housing. But evidently, the legislature thought that elected citizens in towns needed to
Hey, Jeff.
But that's a different story, but you are required to meet it, so if you don't have those links that we sent to you, please let us know and we can get those back out to you. So, Joe had a letter, did you have something?
Yeah, just a quick question. Do you know if the Connecticut Bar Association will send either certification or something that we attended that, or anything that the state will require on file that commissioners have attended training? Just want to make sure we ask for the right documents if that's expected, or is just the receipt going to be proof enough?
I saved the registration documents, not knowing what the state might want to prove.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think you're on your own.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So again, just make certain you try to get that done. We don't want to have to like kick you out the door. So, any citizens' comments on things not on this agenda? Okay. We don't have any correspondence. Tim Young is not here. But I don't know if Joe Palulik would like to make a.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second. No offense, Joe Mark, but I want to make certain he gets in on the fun. Tim's not here. So, then this is gonna be the highlight. What are you gonna tell people?
The one and only time I get to do that.
Well, if you get to know the chair might let you do it more often.
Oh, all right.
So, so motion made by Pulick, seconded by Morse to adjourn the meeting. There's no reason to have discussion on that. I'm gonna go through the roll. Joe Adaletta.
Aye.
Mark
Aye.
Rothmer, Sid Blodgett. Jeff Gordon. I will actually vote aye on that one. David Morse.
Aye.
Joe Palulik. Doug Porter is not here. Dwight Reinowitz.
Aye.
Okay, well, without objection, that passes, and whatever time you have, Amy, we are so adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.
Good night. Take care.
Better